Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. As we think about the plight of Job and the situation that he's in, when we think about his suffering, typically all we think about is the fact that he lost his children, that he lost his property, some of his property, his possessions, and that he lost his health. And those tend to be the only things that we focus on when it comes to Job's suffering. But one of the things that can also be combined with those, and it was actually a direct result from those things, is loneliness. Suffering always brings some degree of loneliness. And I think that's something that we don't typically think about when we think about suffering. Usually we just think about what happened to the person, or what they're going through physically, or what their circumstances are. But there's always a hint, at least a hint of loneliness, if not a whole lot of loneliness, that comes with sorrow. There's basically two reasons for that. For one, when you're going through something hard and difficult, some type of crisis or tragedy, you find yourself lonely or feeling lonely because you're surrounded by people who don't really understand what you're going through. As well-intentioned as they might be, and as supportive as they might be, and maybe they are good comforters, unlike what we talked about yesterday. Maybe they're people who do just sit with you and listen to you and are sympathetic. But still, at the end of the day, they don't really know what you're going through. And you're alone in your suffering because you're the only one that's enduring that suffering. Even if there's other people who have gone through similar things, still, each person's experience of those same things is going to be a little bit different. And so you're going to feel a sense of loneliness connected to your suffering because no one really truly knows what you're going through psychologically and emotionally in connection to this tragic event, whatever it might be. The other way a person might become lonely in connection to suffering is maybe they become literally lonely. People perhaps aren't comfortable being around them because of their tragedy, and they don't know what to say. They feel uncomfortable, and so maybe they begin to avoid the person who is suffering. And eventually the person becomes alone in that sense. Maybe it's a person who's lost a loved one, and now they go home to an empty house, maybe someone that they were living with, a spouse, and they're literally alone because of that. Or maybe people turn against you in your suffering. That's what we find with Job, and that's probably like the worst thing you can experience. Not only are you dealing with the suffering that you have, the things that happen to you tragically, but then also people are speaking against you. And that comes out in our reading today, where people who were very close to him have turned on him. Even his good friends are accusing him of some type of sin, assuming that he had done something wrong to deserve what he's going through. Just a horrible situation. And so there's different ways that we might have loneliness connected to our suffering. And sometimes it might be both. It might be that we feel alone because no one else knows what we're going through, and maybe people have abandoned us in our suffering. And if we find ourselves experiencing loneliness, we're not alone. In our loneliness, we're not alone. If we're suffering loneliness in connection to suffering, we're not alone in the sense that there have been others who have experienced that as well. And Job is a prime example of that. One of the things that really stands out to me with Job is just how lonely he must feel. He had his children, of course, die, doesn't have them around anymore. His wife wanted him to curse God and die. She wasn't being that supportive. His friends are turning against him. And from Job's standpoint, he feels like even God has turned against him. And you take away all those other factors, and he's just alone. Even his servants, he says in our reading today, won't even listen to him. He's just completely abandoned. So if we feel lonely in connection to our suffering, we can look to Job and maybe realize, we're not alone in our loneliness because he went through that as well. But more important than that, we can look to Jesus Christ himself. He suffered in a way that no one else has ever suffered. And he was one who even had his own father turn his face away. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was lonely. Not only was he suffering on the cross, but he suffered loneliness on the cross as well. And we could say even in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the good thing about Jesus, when we're thinking about our own sense of loneliness connected to our suffering, is that he can fill the place of both of those types of loneliness. That is, when we think no one else knows what we're going through, Christ can say, yes, I know what you're going through. He too has suffered and had experienced things similar to what we have experienced. And we can say that we're not alone, literally alone, because he's walking alongside of us. His presence is there with us in our suffering. And he's abiding with us the whole time to help us, to strengthen us, and to bring us through. And so focusing on Christ, focusing on the cross, can also help alleviate our sense of loneliness sometimes in connection to our suffering. So our reading today gives us a good opportunity to reflect on the loneliness that comes with suffering. And if we are the sufferers at the moment, we can take comfort in knowing that we're not alone in our loneliness. Others have experienced that as well, and we can take courage and see how they got through it and follow their example. But also we can be assured that Christ, who has gone through the ultimate suffering of dying on the cross, he not only suffered, but he's here with us now, present with us now. But then also we can think of it in terms of other people perhaps that we know who are suffering and recognize the fact that they're probably feeling pretty lonely in their suffering. Maybe reach out to them and contact them and just let them know that you're there for them and that you want to do what you can to help them not feel quite as lonely in their suffering as much as you're able to do that. So these are some things to think about today, guys. I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.